conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He is a trust advisor helping companies overcome disengagement to become a business people love to work for and buy from. None other than Mr. Elliot Sawyer.
Hey Daniel, how you doing? Great to be on the show.
Welcome, Mr. Elliot. I'm fabulous and excellent. Thank you so much for being hard on abstract essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I know?
Yeah, I am a keynote speaker and business consultant. I help companies and leaders overcome disengagement by building trust. And when you build trust, you can earn more loyalty, more. You can recruit better talent, have better performance, and ultimately better revenue. So that's what I do, and I specialize. Been doing this for a while, giving over 1,500 talks, and really enjoy working with leaders and helping companies transform culture.
Indeed. Because of that, Mr. Elliot, we celebrate you. We salute you of what you are doing right now. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Yes, thank you, thank you. So today, let's talk about being you, helping companies overcome disengagement to become a business people. So tell us, Mr. Elliot, your work focuses on how identity is shaped through experience or experiences of rejection and belonging. That's a deeply personal framing for a business conversation. Where did that lens come from, and what did rejection teach you about yourself that success never could?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that rejection definitely taught me is this idea that when you work so hard to get people to engage with you, that it can often backfire on you if you're not driven by the right motives. A lot of rejection, I believe, happens from a place of self-interest, where people are focused on what they can get from people rather than what they can give to people. And when you do that as a leader, if you do that as a company or organization, when you're focused on self-interest, it actually causes more disengagement. People actually resist you. They move away from you rather than moving towards you. We'll often say something like this, that interested people are more loved than interesting people. And so all of us, or I shouldn't say all of us, a lot of people are trying to focus on, how do I become more interesting? How to become more charismatic? How do I gain more attraction? How do I bring people my way, customers my way, great talent my way? And rather than trying to be interesting, I argue, and research shows that if you could be interested, if you could put others above yourself, that you would be highly engaging, and more of the things that you're looking for would come your way.
Highly engaging, and we love that, Mr. Elliot. You delivered over 1,500 talks and spent more than 10,000 hours guiding professionals. What's the one pattern you've seen across every industry, every level of leadership, every culture, that thing that is almost always broken but always never named?
Trust. Trust is the thing that I see broken most often. It affects internally with teams inside the organization, with employees, and trust is broken at levels with the market and customers. We've done some research, and it's interesting that the research is actually the exact same number on both sides. 77% of employees are disengaged at some level, and also that same number, 77% of buyers are skeptical. So you've got 77% of your customers disengaging and 77% of the buyers who are skeptical of your business. So that tells me that there's a great deal of trust that has been broken somewhere, and you've got to build that back.
Indeed, trust is something else. You said that self interest is the root cause of disengagement. This is a strong claim. How does self interest show
Yeah.
up inside leadership teams and customer relationship in a ways that the leaders don't recognize because it look like a normal business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Daniel. Self interest can surface many different ways, but the way that we funneled it down into the most acute and almost clinical way of you approaching how can you change this is in your motives. And motives are the thing that will drive you towards something or away from something. But self interest shows up in the motives of a leader, shows up in the motives of the team, and shows up in the motives of the organization. And that will again cause the rejection, the disengagement that we talked about. Um, and oftentimes leaders, especially, are trying to find ways to get people to engage with them, and they use techniques and tactics that often come off manipulative, are rooted in again that self-interest. What can I get from you? What can I gain from you? Rather than how can I be for you, which empowers everyone around us. And so when you have a self-interested leader who's focused that way, those tactics and techniques often work against them. We say something like this: tactics try picking the lock, but trust is the master key. And so rather than using tactics and strategy and techniques on people to try and get them what you want from them, building trust is something that will last and something that will achieve goals for everybody.
Definitely build your trust. And why do so many companies unknowingly destroy trust while trying to grow? What is they getting wrong, and why don't they see it happening in real time?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of answers there, Daniel. I think one of the first things that come to mind is companies, they don't have a value for their reputation. I think when you have a value of what your reputation is, it causes you to think differently and behave differently, because reputation is something that's going to last. Reputation is something that's going to outlive your own. It's what people say on the fringes. It's what people say outside of your company. It's what people say outside of your presence. And so I think when leaders or companies can have a focus on their reputation, it centers them. It brings them back to a place of it actually matters how I treat people. It actually matters how I handle things. It actually matters how I manage situations, because my reputation matters. My reputation is important and I have a value for that. It significant plays out good or bad. I think a lot of companies miss the mark on that, though. I think that they don't value their reputation. The second thing I think is a lot of folks are in a short term game business. They're thinking, what can I get right now? What do I need right now in this moment? How am I just trying to win this season, rather than a longevity perspective? Like, we want to last, we want to sustain, we want to grow and continue to move towards bigger and better days. But we have to have long term in mind, rather than just thinking, what am I doing right now in the moment? I work with sales teams often, and I'll tell sales teams, especially in business to business, is it really matters how you respond in the small things, whether it's an email, a message, a meeting with a client, because it doesn't just represent that first transaction, it represents many transactions. People are going to do business with people they enjoy. They're going to give preference to people they enjoy working with. And if you treat them poorly because they didn't give you business, let's say on the front end, there's no way they're going to do it on the long term, and you're not going to be able to sustain a relationship. So I think that's the third piece: is you've got the reputation, you've got short-term business. And the third part is I think people don't have a value for the relationships of the people they work with and work for. And when you have a value for relationships, you nurture and cultivate those relationships differently, because you know that it prospers them and it prospers you. But I think people unfortunately are short-sighted, especially today, and they use people just to get what they want.
Very well said, Mr. Elliot. Most leaders think they are doing the right things. They communicate, they set goals, they give feedback, yet still struggle with
Yeah.
disengaged teams and guarded customers. What is the blind spot? What are they missing? What is right in front of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes back to something we spoke of a little bit earlier. I think it starts with motives. Motives start in the mirror. It starts with you actually looking at, how am I approaching my team and my day and my assignment? Um, we've taken a framework that we have and we boil it down into the two baseline motives that every human being experiences, and that's either a selfish or selfless motive. And the psychology shows over and over again that an individual who leads with selfish motives or selfish intent will overwhelmingly experience distance from people, and ultimately they'll experience emotional breakdown. It'll start to wear them out. It'll exhaust them. It's fatiguing. You're pushing against something rather than there being a momentum what you're doing. The other side of that though is leading with selfless motives. And this isn't about perfection. This is about changing your intent and changing the way you operate some things. So when you lead in a selfless motive, over and over again, time will show that relationships are strong, they are resilient, and people really enjoy them. And there's a plethora of them. There's more people coming your way when you're leading with a selfless motive rather than a selfish motive. And so I think that's the blind spot is the motive. I think people are apprehensive to look internally or look in the mirror of where am I responsible for this, or how am I treating my team or my customers, and how is that affecting things, rather than just I got to get this quota met, I've got to get this deadline created, I've got to get this project done, and just moving through people or burning through people and not realizing that there's relationships involved in the process.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Elliot. You said many common business tactics are actually self serving and erode trust. Can you give a specific example of what those tactics are and the ones that feel productive but one quietly corrosive and what to do instead?
Yeah, I'll give you three examples. And I work a lot with sales teams, but this does work internally with leaders and teams and organizations. I have something called the paradigm. It's a paradigm of how to implement care into an organization. And the first one is that relating is greater than transacting. Now, treating someone like a human being and fostering a relationship, relating to them is going to be stronger than just transacting with them. Just using them for whatever assignment you're trying to get done or whatever quota you're trying to hit, relating is greater than transacting. Transacting is what a lot of are the baseline for a lot of tactics that people use these days is transactional type interactions. The second one is helping is greater than exploiting. Helping is greater than exploiting. What I mean by that is everybody's got pain points, and seeking those out specifically as a leader will help you build trust with your team or your organization or your customers. If you can seek those out saying, hey, what are the pain points and how can I be a help here, rather than I'm just going to exploit you for the things that you can do for me. So helping is greater than exploiting. Exploiting is another tactic that a lot of people use. I'm going to exploit you for your time, your energy, your capabilities, your weaknesses, your strengths. I'm going to exploit you for my gain. And the third one is giving is greater than taking. A lot of techniques out there are taking techniques. How can I get from you what I need? How can I get from you what I want? And generosity, they've actually done studies on this from a clinical psychology standpoint. Generosity actually releases something in both parties. It's called oxytocin, and it creates a bond between you and the individual. So if you have led with generosity, if you're going to say, how can I give towards this person or give towards this team or give towards this potential client, it's going to actually release oxytocin in you and them and create a bond. And it's scientifically proven, the old scripture that says it's greater to give than receive. And again, most people are looking to take, they're looking to pull something from somebody rather than giving is greater than taking, and the taking is often the tactics that people use.
Well said again, Mr. Well said again, Mr. Elliot. You work specifically in low
Thank you.
trust environments where skepticism is high, industries where trust is hardest to earn and growth is hardest to unlock. What does it particularly or practically look like to rebuild trust in those settings?
Wow, that's a loaded question. We could spend all day on this one. It very much is contextual. There is there is a breakdown somewhere, and so the first thing is kind of pinpointing the breakdown. Where has trust eroded? What has caused trust to lose ground here, or why do people not trust, or what do we have to do to regain trust? So it starts with kind of pinpointing the breakdown, um, and then secondly, we have an acronym that we use that is trust, but it's based on a factor analysis of, again, clinical psychology shows what builds trust and what sustains it. And there's 5 things that we have identified that specifically help establish trust or rebuild trust. And the first one is transparency. Transparency, it's got to be honest, it's got to be clear, it's got to be open with the individuals or those where trust has been broken out. So transparency is the first one. The second one is reliability, meaning you have to actually do what you say you're going to do. You actually have to be a person who consistently shows up and shows that you're reliable in order for trust to be built, established, or regained. The third one is kind of the climax of trust. It's the one that I think people overlook the most, but it's actually the most significant. And it's the word understanding. Understanding is the keystone element for trust. Let me say that one more time. Understanding is the keystone element for trust. It's not just you doing everything that you can to show the other person that you are worthy of their trust. It's you actually understanding what they need in order to release that trust. So if trust has been broken, you have got to go find out from the other party on what it's going to take for you to understand where they are in order for the bridge of trust to be rebuilt. So understanding is huge in this section. It's monumental in order for trust to be built or rebuilt. Again, it's understanding. The last two is sincerity and talent. Now, sincerity is actually the other person feeling that you're for them. And you've got to lead with that sort of care or treatment towards people, that sincere thing, in order for trust to really be built. And the last one is talent. This is where most people spend most of their time. It is an element, but it's not the biggest element. Talent meaning you've actually got to be good at what you do. You've got to have a competency. You've got to be strong in your abilities, or strong in your career, or strong in what you do and what you bring, not only because it's performance, but it actually reinforces trust. When someone says this person is getting better at their craft, or they're getting better at what they do, or they're good and they're excelling into this, that actually forms greater trust.
Again, well said, Mr. Elliot. Your personal story includes overcoming performance anxiety, not just a
Yeah.
nervousness before a speech, but a deeper struggle with how much of your focus was on yourself, how you're performing,
Yeah.
how you're being perceived, and what it feel like at its worst.
Yeah, Daniel, this is a big part of my testimony. My story is as a young athlete, I struggled with performance anxiety. It would be something that affected me anytime I stepped onto a field. I was a baseball player for a lot of my life and developed this performance anxiety that was almost like a handicap. It kept me from doing what I most wanted to do. And anytime I stepped onto a field, a stage, or in front of a classroom, I'd be overwhelmed with this nervousness that would inhibit me from trying to perform anything that I felt I was supposed to do. Well, later in my life, I actually became a pastor of a church. And one of the things that is entailed with being a pastor is you're going to give sermons, you're going to speak in front of an audience. And I loved all aspects of the ministry and working with people. But this one responsibility was a dark cloud, or a big shadow that I had to go through and endure. And at one point, I finally decided enough was enough. I thought if I'm called to do this, then I'm going to be equipped to do this. And I used to go into empty auditoriums and practice messages and let the nerves come on, let the anxiety come on. I found out later in therapy, this is called exposure therapy, when you actually step into the places of anxiety and rather than avoiding them or coping with them, you step into them and embrace what's going on in order to break through. So I was in these empty auditoriums and I would give these messages and I would feel the waves of nerves and anxiety and nausea and all these sort of things that would come over me. And I did this for quite some time until finally I came to a breaking point. And I realized at that breaking point, and this has been sort of the crux of my personal breakthrough that I then have helped other leaders with, is that so much of my anxiety was rooted in self-interest. I was using whatever stage or platform I could to validate my own needs. I would, be on a field and say I'm performing for this coach or my family or my friends, or I'd be on a stage and speaking in front of people, not just what I could do for them, but more what I could do for myself, how this was feeding my own ego and feeding my own need for validation. And in that, I started to realize how much rejection I had experienced. And again, the science shows that those who lead with self-interest are going to experience more rejection. They're going to experience more distance from people. And that was a real insecurity for me. So over time, as I had this breakthrough, I started to realize leading with a selfless motive, I was experiencing a higher level of engagement. I was experiencing way less rejection and way less neglect because people are open to those who are for them rather than just what they can get from them. And so that's a little bit of my story, but it's a piece of how the performance anxiety was one of the hardest things I ever dealt with, but it led to one of the greatest breakthroughs I've ever experienced. And now it's kind of established the platform on which I speak to, because a lot of leaders and organizations are experiencing disengagement and they don't want to, but oftentimes it's rooted in their own self-interest.
Mr. Elliot, to wrap up our discussion for today, what is the relationship between a leader's own sense of belonging and their ability to create a belonging of their team? Can you give us a sense of belonging to others if you don't feel it yourself?
Yeah. I think it's almost impossible to create belonging if you don't feel the sense of belonging. I think if a leader doesn't doesn't have that for themselves, it's hard to reproduce that for others. You often hear this adage about leadership that it's lonely at the top. And I think that is true, but it doesn't have to be. I think the leaders who isolate themselves, one, are a dangerous leader, and two, they're not a very effective leader for a lot of reasons. But a leader has to have that own sense of belonging for themselves. They've got to seek that out. They've got to find that. They've got to create that. Then it's an overflow of who they are and what they experience. It's got to be something they experience, something they live out, if they're ever going to reproduce it in others. And those who do have that at a deep level, it'll naturally flow out of them.
Well said again, Mr. Elliot. And can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Abstract
Thank
SA?
thank you, Daniel. Yeah, if they want to hear more or are interested in a keynote speaking engagement or workshop, they can go to elliotsawyer.com and find out more.
Definitely find more people. And Mr. Elliot, before I will let you go, if a listener or watch or viewers is watching right now, leaders who can suspect that trust is leaking to their organizations, but they are not sure where, and they are not sure what to find out without causing alarm. What would you want them to hear from you today? What is the first move that doesn't require full organizational diagnosis?
Yeah, if you could repeat the question one more time, Daniel, I just want to make sure I answer that accurately for you.
Definitely, yes. If a listener is a leader who suspects that trust is leaking in their organization,
Okay.
but they are not sure where and they are not sure how to find out without causing alarm. What would you want them to hear from you today? What is the first move that doesn't require a full organization diagnosis?
Well, that's a great question. I think the first thing I would say is that trust is fixable. If it's been lost or broken, it is fixable, and there's hope. There's hope for that for sure, and it actually can affect the things that we're looking at, like performance and engagement and revenue at a high level. So one, there's a lot of hope. But secondly, I would always say that everything rises and falls on leadership. So it starts with you. If you can't pinpoint exactly where it's coming from, that's okay, because you get to lead something new, you get to lead a different way. And so it starts with you. If you become a person who really values trust, and you're working to build that and establish that and strengthen that, it's going to affect the areas that you're involved with, and then it's going to affect the areas that are outside your peripheral.
Well said, Mr. Elliot, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Monica people, see you soon.